Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder 2, probably the best German copy-paste tank that there is, the Spähpanzer BMP-1. Battle rating 7.3, rank 5 light tank, and yes, it's a copy-paste tank. The original one is the Soviet BMP-1, and also even the Chinese have a version of this tank, just with a different name. What this brings to the table is effectively nothing new, and yet I think that this is one of the game changers for a nation. So the Vickers MBT, or Vickers Mark 7 rather, is quick and therefore brings a big relief in my opinion to the British high tier tanks. But it is only one, and so this tank, while being good and while serving Germany just fine, I think, it cannot do all by itself, but at least you have one, and it is a classical case of better have one and not use it rather than not use it because you don't have it. So light tanks, why do I always make such a big fuss about this mobility? Because it's not only the mobility, it is also the combination of firepower, mobility, maneuverability, and the rest of the tools. The rest of the tools include such things as artillery strike, the ability to help your teammates to be repaired, and also the scouting ability. And the scouting is just so mighty. It just denies the enemy any sort of successful easy flanking. You give a lot of intel to the rest of your team, and you allow them to have enough time to move up when you are also keeping the enemy light tanks busy on the flanking battle. Talking about enemy light tanks, yeah, I didn't see here the Chinese version of the BMP-1, but look at this bullshit tank burned down hull break. I hate this. This is deeply frustrating. This shouldn't be the case. So this battle, on the other hand, is a classical case of the time is ticking, because what you're about to see is absolutely aggressive gameplay, but there is actually some reasoning behind the madness. There is method to the madness, and that is that I want to obtain a position that in a few seconds later is no longer obtainable anymore, or you just can't get there in time without getting shot to pieces by all the snipers, all the campers where I just looked. So Port Novorossiysk, a certain version of it, that heavily prefers, in my opinion, the southern spawn rather than the northern spawn. And I think that the crucial cap is C. B is firmly in the hands of the northern team, A is firmly in the hands of the southern team, and that leaves only C. And as you can see, this M56 Scorpion would have captured it without anybody being in the position, if you look at the minimap, to shoot at him. And so they just could have lined up in the right side roads. English is difficult today. In the side roads where I just was looking, and just snipe everybody trying to get to C. And yeah, there will be a little bit of melee combat, but why do this? Why not rush in and defend the capture point? I know that I will never get away with capturing it, but I can deny the enemy team getting it. So now let's talk about the tank, shall we? Let's begin with the armor, and yes, the upper frontal glacis is a bit bouncy, but you never should realize it. The lower glacis is a huge target, and as you could see, you are very pronounced to hull break. You're very sensitive, and especially aircraft with their cannons, machine guns, bombs and rockets just love you as a juicy target. And so the tank's protection is, unsurprisingly for a light tank, not really all that convincing. Let's talk about the mobility. And this is where the tank has a little bit of a nice 22.5 horsepower to ton ratio, or close to, because of the 300 horsepower strong engine propelling the 13.4 tank to a maximum speed of 65 kilometers per hour. The reverse speed is something that I don't really like all that much. It's not extremely terrible, but minus 11 kilometers per hour is acceptable for a medium tank. It's nice for a heavy tank to have, but for a light tank it just doesn't really cut it. On the other hand, you still have this grunt in the engine to throw the vehicle around and just move into the other direction. Then let's talk about the turret rotation speed, and this is probably the big downside in my opinion of this tank. It is 20 degrees per second. It feels much slower. A lot of tanks around this battle rating have it. I think a light tank should be a bit quicker. Yes, there is historical accuracy, etc., but you have to count with a rather slow turret rotation speed in contrast to some other tanks that have 25, 30, even 40 degrees per second. So in close quarters, this is a bit of a trouble thing. Talking about close quarters, close waters, see what I did there? This is the only German amphibious tank. Close quarters engagements. What do you have in terms of firepower? Well, as you can see, I have a 73mm 2A28 cannon as main gun, 40 rounds of ammunition, reload 6 seconds, 2 ammunition types available, and also a ATGM launcher, 4 ATGMs overall in total in 2 different flavors. Let's talk about the ammunition. So the first shell type for the 73mm gun is the PG9 heat anti-tank grenade. Muzzle velocity is 665 meters per second, 665, neighbor of the beast, and then we have an evil penetration of 300 millimeters. This is quite nice. It causes hull break, it doesn't lose penetration over range, but on the other hand, the muzzle velocity, the drop off in the aiming reticle, it is best used at close to medium range. I personally don't really feel comfortable using it above 600 to 800 meters. And yeah, I know you are all the rattlesnacks that pull off all those 360 no-scope kills across Kursk all the time, and you always find that one Amarak shell with the very first try. I know it, but I can't. So I could train it much more, and I'll do so in the future. Then the second shell type is the OG9 with 290 meters per second muzzle velocity. That is not good. That is like throwing watermelons, which coincidentally describes also the penetration values of 11 millimeters. Hey, if you freeze a watermelon and you throw it at somebody, it's nasty, believe me that. But for a tank HE shell, not really all that impressive, right? Then the 2 missiles. The first one is the 9M14 first generation ATGM hand-guided, 120 meters per second muzzle velocity. That again is very slow. Maximum range 3 kilometers, so that takes a very long time up until you reach the maximum speed. 400 millimeters of penetration. It's nice to have, you have 4 of them, but it's better to have the upgraded 9M113 ATGM, aka the Concours. 205 meters per second, and also a range of 3 kilometers and 600 millimeters of penetration, with also very good post-penetration damage effect. And it is semi-automatic, so you can guide it with the mouse, so you don't have to use your key bindings to do this. So with all this said, what can the vehicle do with it? Well, it's pretty nice. You just can relocate all the time. You can support your teammates directly or indirectly. You can scout the enemies. You can give your team so much support, intel, and many advantages. And so you're always in the fight at your choosing. You can decide under which terms you engage the enemy, or you just don't engage him. So again, why do I make all this fuss about such a copy-paste tank? Well, because Germany, much like Britain, have a little bit of a problem when it comes to mobility. And I am a firm believer and completely 100% convinced that mobility is the key to success. With all the power creep, with all the feature creep, with planes in the air, your best weapon is stealth, and your second best weapon is just simply mobility. And then we're talking here about armor and firepower and whatnot. But yeah, then this tank is also very strong when it comes to the firepower. Let's talk about Germany's lack of mobility. The first and for a long time only light tank that Germany has is the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 234-2, aka the Puma. Battle rating 2.7. And then when it comes to the tech tree, we have a 6.0 battle rating gap till we get the Begleitpanzer 57, which as a light tank isn't all that great. Its mobility is average, it is in many cases even slower than the main battle tanks that you have to deal with all the time. And yeah, 8.3. So in between there is only the RE251 as a 6.7 premium. The RE251 is very powerful. It might be even better in some situations than the BMP-1, but at least you have the BMP-1 as a tech tree vehicle. That's also important. And, you know, there is also the TAM for the Germans, but that's some high tier stuff where mobility advantages of light tanks then disappear. I think that all nations with light tanks have a significant advantage, and especially for seasoned veterans of War Thunder, experienced players, you know, all the pros. I think they all would agree that mobility is better than armor, except if the armor is exceptionally awesome or biased, IS-6 when it first was sold. But on the other hand, mobility just gives you so much more flexibility to react to situations, to react to combat situations, to support your team, to relocate, and again, all the other tools like artillery strike, scouting, and helping your teammates to repair. You know, and here, the best example, T95, some of the best armor in the game, battle rating for battle rating, and it doesn't really matter, and I just ignore him, there is nothing that he can do, he realizes it, bails out, and gives me the ace. Just like that, right? And then A gets captured again. And this is another form of intel, right? Because I know that now there is somewhere in the vicinity of A, and he stays in the capture zone to capture it. I look around, and then I want to bring the fight to him. So this is one of the best scenarios that you can find yourself into. Yes, I know that everybody is playing for himself, but also if you play with your team, you stay alive longer, you can deal more damage, you have more wins, etc., which also is in your interest as of a player. And so I think that there is another charm of War Thunder when team play happens. And I always try to give a big shout out to light tank drivers that know what they're doing. I think that the time of armor is long gone in War Thunder. It's always easy to counter armor one way or the other, again with the exception of certain tanks that were intentionally or not bugged. So I think that I really like this tank, and again it is one of those cases where I think that Gaijin never should have introduced the original BMP-1 without giving it to the Germans at the same time, because for many patches Germany was at a severe disadvantage. And when I say Germany is a disadvantage, very often people come up with this Germany suffers. I want to lose a few words about this, right? So if you look at naval forces, Germany has by far the strongest cruiser lineup as it stands right now, right? Admiral Hipper, and then with the next patch also the Prinz Eugen as a premium, and the Deutschland class Admiral Graf Spee. That is actually too much. But sometimes the logic of the internet is absurd and really stupid, because a lot of people think that because Germany is overpowered there, it's okay when you ruffle stomp their tanks at a certain battle rating bracket. And so Germany suffers is as stupid as Britain suffers or America suffers or any other nation in general suffers, because every nation has battle rating brackets where it's exceptionally strong and where it's exceptionally weak. But I don't want those exceptionally big differences in terms of performance. Every nation must have the tools to work with them. Every nation must have the opportunity to be on par with all the other nations, right? Because there is so much diversity within War Thunder. And there is just so many vehicles, maps and game modes, etc. And yet most of it is irrelevant because of a handful of vehicles ruining it for the rest of it. And so the BMP-1, the Spähpanzer BMP-1, is a little bit of an equalizer. And so I think that this is the greatest plus point ever to this tank. Now, big shout out here to this player in the SO8000 Narval. He was very patient. He showed a lot of knowledge. And look at this rocket. Oh my god, that was so well done by this guy. And he was also the first on the enemy team. So, the BMP-1, Spähpanzer BMP-1. It is a well-known vehicle, it should be, and it is absolutely worth going for it within the German tech tree. Gaijin should introduce much more mobility for the German tech tree and for the British tech tree from 3.0 to the rest of the battle ratings, period. I am always for this so that those nations have a fighting chance at the battle rating brackets where they have a lack of mobility. I cannot just stress how important mobility is within War Thunder for tanks, especially if you want to support the big bulk of the tech tree, which is significantly slower. Having said this, that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. As always, let me know in the comment section your thoughts about this subject, about this topic, and what are your suggestions for additions. We had quite a lot of suggestions in the past, but maybe you can come up with some more often. And please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and as usual, we will see each other on the waves, in the skies, and on the battlefields of War Thunder.